I was outdoors this morning working on something, a project that I actually started a couple of years ago. I never got finished, and I'm going to leave all the guesswork to you guys what that might be. And anyway, so I was working on that, and it started to rain, so I had to scrub that project. So I came in here and I started editing video, and I got a video edited. And I was reading comments on, a couple of the videos that I posted recently. And I want to talk about grain direction and the problems that can happen with solid wood when you don't follow the rules for solid wood. Now, what I have here is the sample I had before to talk about, relative strength and what's needed. And this is the box joint one. And this one is the one that I have butt glued, and I already broke it because I needed these two pieces of wood for something. So I broke it apart. And I got the box joint one here. This is glued solidly together. And that's possible with this solid wood because I'm following the grain orientation. It all runs this way. And as far as grain orientation goes, that's all you really need to know about it is long grain versus short grain, you could say. And this is what's known as long grain right here. This is where it goes with the grain. Short grain is across the grain, cross grain. I don't use the term long grain and short grain. Some people do. I use with the grain or against the grain. Or cross the grain. Cross the grain is more appropriate. And this is perfectly fine. This kind of glue up joint here is perfectly fine. The troubles happen when you try to do something like this, where you try to glue long grain against short grain like this, or this is what's known as a cross grain glue joint. And what's happening here is this wood will try to expand and contract. It won't try, it will. If this is solid wood and you're on the planet Earth, this is going to expand and contract with relative moisture changes. Whereas this is going to expand and contract too, but it's going to expand and contract this way. It doesn't expand and contract along the grain. So what you have here is something that's fixed, and here you have something that's moving. So you need a flexible union there. You can't make a rigid junction. It will eventually fail. If you glue these two parts together, they may hold for a while, but eventually they'll fail because they're under a constant stress where this piece is trying to expand and contract. And that's a mistake that I see quite often, even with experienced woodworkers. They'll make that kind of a joint. So this specifically comes up in relationship to my console table that I'm building, that series on my Red channel, and a few people have commented on, okay, I glued the top to the sides and to the bottom fully, but I didn't glue in those strips, and that was exactly what that was. Imagine this is the top, this is the side, this is the bottom, and here's the other side over here. If I can hold this, they all line up. All the grain is oriented the same way. It runs around the box like that. So when I went to put the strips that support the drawers in, they're long grain going across the grain, so you can't glue that in solid. It will restrict the movement of this side panel. And I only glued in the first inch. You'll see that kind of violation, I guess you could call it, quite often. I made my wooden vise 4 years ago. And when I built that, I made it out of solid wood. And I was very careful to orient all of the wood in as close as I could get to the correct grain orientation as I could. Because, that's a fairly complex thing to put together. I couldn't avoid it in some cases. But the biggest area where a lot of people that have made the vise ignore that is right at the front where the thing that you turn, where the handle is, the spindle goes up against, and they oriented the front plate sideways like that when it was supposed to be up and down to follow the grain of the rest of the moving jaw. Another example you'll see when someone makes a workbench and they make this big, thick, heavy workbench, say 4 inches thick from solid wood, usually like 2x4s and stuff like that. It looks good and it works good, but then they mortise in legs, and then they connect the legs with stretchers that are going across grain. So here you've got a wide top that will expand and contract with moisture being restrained by a stretcher that goes between the two legs that go across. I can't model this correctly in my hands here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw something up in SketchUp and I'll put it on the screen here as an example. So if you're just starting out at woodworking and you want to be good at it, this is one of the first things that you have to learn about wood, and you have to keep it in mind every time you build something, especially from solid wood. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up here because it looks like it's getting sunny out again, and I need to get back out and do that. I just thought I would stop and make this short video on that very, very important woodworking rule that a lot of people don't seem to, if they know about it, they sometimes don't pay attention to it. And it can be tricky. It's something, like I said, you have to keep it in mind whenever you're doing, working with solid wood.